Toronto Mayor Rob Ford apologizes for oral sex remarks. Troubled Toronto Mayor Rob Ford has apologized for obscene comments he made on live TV while denying he had offered oral sex to a female staff member. The Canadian politician used what he called unforgivable language in remarks to reporters. He also threatened to take legal action against former employees who made claims about his drinking and drug use. It is the latest scandal to engulf 44-year-old Mr. Ford, who last week admitted smoking crack cocaine. Police documents released on Wednesday quoted Ford associates as saying that the mayor had driven drunk, used racially abusive language, threatened staff, consorted with a woman suspected of being a prostitute, and made a sexual proposition to a female staff member. Particularly disappointing. On Thursday morning, he told reporters the allegations were outright lies, although he conceded he might have driven after taking alcohol. However, reporters were left gasping by his profane outburst as he denied having once offered oral sex to a former female employee. The father of 2 young children said that he was happily married and crudely commented that he enjoyed enough oral sex at home. Later on Thursday, Mr. Ford was flanked by his wife, Renata, as he expressed regret for the graphic language, the latest in a string of apologies. He said his integrity as a father and husband had been attacked, prompting him to see red. I acted on complete impulse in my remarks, he said. Mr. Ford also announced he was getting help from healthcare professionals. The erratic mayor was wearing a Toronto Argonauts jersey when he made the sexually charged comments. The Canadian Football League team said in a statement, These latest remarks, while wearing our team's jersey, are particularly disappointing. Stubborn pig-headed. Councillor Karen Stingst later said the city had suspended all school trips to City Hall indefinitely because staff deemed it unsafe. Meanwhile, many of the 44-member City Council turned their backs on the mayor as he addressed political matters. This is one of the most stubborn, pig-headed people I think we have ever seen, said Councillor Janet Davis. He seems to have no self-awareness, no core of moral character. It is stunning. In his initial remarks on Thursday, the mayor had vowed legal action against his former chief of staff and 2 other aides over allegations they made to police, detailed in legal papers released on Wednesday. The police interviews were conducted to obtain a search warrant for Alexander Lucy, Mr. Ford's friend and occasional driver, whom police accused of marijuana possession and trafficking. The mayor also threatened litigation against a waiter who said he believed Mr. Ford and a woman had snorted cocaine in a private room at a restaurant on St. Patrick's Day 2012. On Wednesday, the City Council voted 41-2 requesting he take leave, but they have no authority to remove him. Mr. Ford has vowed to stay on and run for re-election in October 2014. Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne suggested the provincial government could intervene, as she made a televised statement on Thursday. The things we are seeing and hearing about Mayor Rob Ford are truly disturbing, she said. But it was not all bad news for the Conservative mayor, who was elected in 2010 on a pledge to tackle wasteful spending at City Hall. It was announced that Mr. Ford and his brother, Councillor Doug Ford, would get their own TV talk show next Monday, entitled Ford Nation. The deal with Sun News Network follows last week's cancellation of the brothers' popular weekly radio show with the local broadcaster. Cameron to visit Civil War region. David Cameron will visit the north of Sri Lanka to meet Tamils affected by the country's civil war and alleged abuses as he heads for a confrontation with the country's president over the regime's human rights record. The Prime Minister, who has defied boycott calls to attend a Commonwealth conference hosted by the island state, is the first world leader to travel to the north since Sri Lanka gained independence in 1948. And he is poised to put his concerns, including demands for an independent inquiry into alleged war crimes by state forces, directly to Mahinda Rajapaksa in a face-to-face meeting. The Canadian, Indian, and Mauritian leaders have stayed away from the Commonwealth heads of government meeting in protest over human rights, but the PM has rebuffed the calls for him to join them, arguing he will better highlight the issues by being there. As many as 40,000 civilians are estimated to have died in the final months of the regime's 26-year fight with Tamil Tiger separatists, according to the UN, which wants an international probe if no new inquiry is held. Mr. Rajapaksa rejects claims his forces indiscriminately shelled Tamils fleeing the intense fighting as Tigers, themselves a brutal guerrilla movement, were defeated and of battlefield executions and rapes. Abuses are reported to continue, with claims of torture, abductions, and intimidation of the media and judiciary, leading the UN human rights chief to warn the country was becoming increasingly authoritarian. Reconciliation efforts have included regional elections in the north and a commission to investigate historic disappearances, but Mr. Cameron has said they do not go anywhere near far enough. He will meet Mr. Rajapaksa at the formal opening of CHOM, which is also being attended by the Prince of Wales on behalf of the Queen, who has the group of mostly former British colonists. But he is then due to fly to the regional capital of the Tamil-dominated north on a visit, which he says he made a condition of his attendance at the event. A bilateral meeting with the Sri Lanka president is scheduled for his return. He will meet the new chief minister of the northern province, former Judge C.V. Venneswaran of the Tamil National Alliance, as well as visiting the offices of the Udayan newspaper, whose presses were burned down and its journalists routinely attacked. Sri Lanka ranks near the foot of the tables for press freedom worldwide, with one prominent national editor murdered and many others attacked and beaten. The run-up to the CHOM summit has seen UK journalists obstructed, with the Channel 4 news team, including the maker of the No Fire Zone documentary viewed by the PM prior to his visit, forced off a train to the north by a mob of protesters who blocked the tracks, accusing them of being in the pay of the Tamil Tigers. The PM will also hear from people forced from their homes by the war and living in a welfare village. He has promised a frank exchange of views with Mr. Rajapaksa over the chilling claims of war crimes and violations of human rights. There is the problem of human rights as we speak today. The people who have disappeared, the lack of free rights for journalists and a free press. But I think perhaps most important of all is the need for proper investigations to look into what happened at the end of this very long, appalling civil war. He rejected Sri Lanka claims he was showing a colonialist attitude. We are two sovereign governments. This is 2013, and we should have these sorts of frank conversations. The president has fended off criticism, telling reporters in Colombo, "We are open, we have nothing to hide." If anyone who wants to complain about human rights violations in Sri Lanka, whether it's torture, whether it is rape, we have a system. If there is any violations, we will take actions against anybody. I am ready to do that. Labour leader Ed Miliband, who previously called on Mr. Cameron to stay away, said that the Prime Minister should join the Commonwealth members to block Mr. Rajapaksa from taking up the 2-year chairmanship of the 53-nation group, normally held by the most recent Trump host. Writing in the Tamil Guardian, Mr. Miliband said that he had serious reservations about Mr. Rajapaksa's suitability for the role of chairman in office of the Commonwealth. The Prime Minister is also to meet new Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott for their first talks since he ousted Julia Gillard in elections in September. Mr. Cameron conceded that some people would not speak to him for fear of reprisals, but that in the way will tell its own story. If that's the case, that will be a demonstration of the difficulties in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of movement, the key freedoms that we value. He told reporters, "The war has been won, and that's a huge relief to people in Sri Lanka, but, as Churchill said, in victory, magnanimity. And Rajapaksa has an opportunity, having won the war, to show real generosity and reconciliation." He drew parallels with the Northern Ireland peace process in terms of power sharing, community identity, and a police force drawn from all sides. These things make a very big difference. Mr. Cameron accused Labour of rank hypocrisy for calling on him to boycott the summit despite the venue being agreed while Labour was in power. "It is extraordinary behavior," he said. In 2009, they effectively agreed the meeting should be held in Sri Lanka. They are just playing politics. It's completely see-through. The UK Director of Campaign Group Human Rights Watch, David Metham, told BBC Radio 4's Today program that Mr. Cameron should keep the focus on human rights during his visit. One of the crucial things he needs to do is press for some sort of international inquiry into what happened in 2009. The Sri Lankans have got their own domestic process, but frankly, it's fatally flawed and it's not going to deliver any real justice to the people who were killed. There needs to be an international mechanism. The other thing, which is equally important, is that there needs to be real pressure on the ongoing human rights issues. This isn't just a problem of the past. Speaking from the Commonwealth Summit, Foreign Secretary William Hague taught the program, "There is a great deal of evidence about war crimes, and that is why we have called for an independent, thorough, credible investigation. There should be an investigation. If there isn't, then we will be in favor of international investigation. But it's also important to be able to work with people in this country of all persuasions and backgrounds. We do that with people from all walks of life in Sri Lanka, and they welcome that. Even if they are critics of the government, they have been welcoming in what they have been saying to me in the last few days. The fact that we are here, we are engaged." You can always argue in foreign policy about engagement and isolation, and I do believe in this case engagement is the best thing to do. Kerry, Iran nuclear deal fail-safe. Any deal negotiated with Iran will be fail-safe and will guarantee that Tehran will not have the capacity to develop nuclear weapons, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has said. Trying to reassure skeptical politicians and U.S. allies, Mr. Kerry said the Obama administration wants time to negotiate a deal with Iran that would protect Israel, U.S. interests in the region, and guarantee fail-safe that Iran will not be able to have a nuclear weapon. Mr. Kerry said he spoke shortly before the televised MSNBC interview with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to assure him that the U.S. understands Israel's deep concerns about Iran's nuclear program, which it sees as a threat to its security. Mr. Kerry said he told Mr. Netanyahu that the U.S. and Israel both agree that Iran should not be allowed to become a nuclear-armed nation. But he said that while the Obama administration wants Congress to hold off on imposing any new sanctions while negotiations continue, Israel wants to see more sanctions to force Tehran to surrender any nuclear weapons capabilities. Mr. Kerry, who has been briefing politicians on the most recent negotiations with Iran that took place in Geneva last week, said that Iran would likely view any new U.S. sanctions as a bad faith move in the talks and would embolden hardliners in Tehran who do not want Iran to surrender any nuclear capabilities. Iran insists its program is being developed for peaceful purpose. Boys more likely to be born early. Boys are 14% more likely to be born prematurely than girls, according to new figures, which show an extra 5,700 boys are born early each year in the UK. Data for 2012 reveals there were 34,400 boys born under 37 weeks in the UK, compared to 28,700 girls. Boys are also more likely to suffer death and disability as a result of being born too early, according to the new analysis. Professor Joy Long, a neonatologist and epidemiologist at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, or LSHTM, led a global study on premature birth, which she said was a major problem around the world. The figures showed the rate of premature birth remained largely unchanged in the UK at 7.8%, compared to around 5% in Scandinavian countries and 12% in the US. There are 1,300 deaths due to complications from premature birth each year in the UK, mostly among babies born under 28 weeks. Across the globe, boys have a 14% higher risk of being born prematurely, the research found. Prof. Long said, baby boys have a higher likelihood of infections, jaundice, birth complications, and congenital conditions, but the biggest risk for baby boys is due to preterm birth. For two babies born at the same degree of prematurity, a boy will have a higher risk of death and disability compared to a girl. Even in the womb, girls mature more rapidly than boys, which provides an advantage, because the lungs and other organs are more developed. One partial explanation for more preterm births among boys is that women pregnant with a boy are more likely to have placental problems, preeclampsia, and high blood pressure, all associated with preterm births. Prof. Long said boys had a biological predisposition to begin born early. In the UK, an extra 6,000 boys or so are born preterm each year in the UK, she added. The studies found higher rates of disability in boys across a range of health problems, including cerebral palsy, blindness, and visual impairment, and effect on school performance. If you are born premature, even that little difference in maturity between girls and boys can make a difference, particularly breathing complications for boys, Prof. Long said. She said both young mothers and older mothers had a higher risk of premature birth, with older mothers experiencing higher risk of high blood pressure, diabetes, and medical complications. IVF had also had an impact, increasing the number of multiple births, which were more likely to be premature. Globally, the studies published in the journal Pediatric Research showed that of the 15.1 million babies born too soon, 1 million died due to prematurity. Of the survivors, 345,000, 2.7%, had moderate or severe disability. In some countries, where girls receive less nutrition and medical care, girls were more likely to die than boys, despite their biological survival advantage for girls. The research comes as Professor Andy Shannon, who runs the biggest premature baby clinic in the world, launched a new network to stop the postcode lottery in how pregnant women are treated. He said there was currently no UK-wide guidance for detecting and treating women who might go into labor early. This means a postcode lottery exists, with women in different parts of the UK receiving different treatments and various tests for predicting if they will go into labor early. Many hospitals also use different thresholds for which women they are willing to treat. Prof. Shannon, who runs the clinic at St. Thomas Hospital in London, has now created the Preterm Prevention Network, bringing together more than 30 specialists at hospitals and universities. He said, preterm birth is a major public health issue similar to smoking, obesity, or alcohol, yet despite the profound impact it can have on both families and babies. It has not received the attention it deserves. Preventing prematurity could save thousands of lives and save many children from long-term health problems, and although there has been major progress in predicting and preventing women at risk from giving birth too soon, we still don't have an agreed national strategy that will help reduce the numbers. This problem has been seriously neglected compared to many less important areas in pregnancy. It is simply no longer an option to do nothing. NHS cost and other costs for caring for premature babies exceeds £1 billion a year. 1 in 4 babies who are born extremely prematurely in the UK have a disability such as cerebral palsy, blindness, or profound hearing loss. For babies born at 26 weeks and under, the average stay in hospital is almost 16 weeks. Jan Brewing, chief executive of the baby charity Thomas, said, "More than 1,000 babies born prematurely lose their lives each year, and with prematurity rising, it's absolutely vital that we find a way of giving all women the best possible tests and treatments to reduce their chance of having their baby early." Over the last decade, we've been able to save more and more babies who are born very early, but there has been little change in the numbers who have lasting health problems. The only way forward is to all work together to find the causes and solutions, and I hope that the preterm prevention network will help us get there in months rather than years. In about 40% of cases of premature birth, there is no known cause. Around a third of premature births are